Hello everyone, KryptoCal here, and welcome to the next episode of FTB Skies. In between episodes, I went ahead and did a little bit of building, and as you can see here, if we go down this elevator, this is the area that I have designed in between episodes. I'm going to use this space to automate all of our AE2 processors. This place didn't really take too long to throw together, so I figured it wasn't really worth trying to put a montage together for this or anything. But yeah, hopefully this will be enough space for us starting into AE2 and automating some of those processors. I also did one more thing in between episodes that I actually forgot about, was I crafted the portable storage terminal. And what this does is effectively, and it's a little late for that now because we're going to be getting into AE2 now, but what this lets us do is access our storage here wirelessly. So to make this work, I had to craft a couple of these omnidirectional connectors. So I only had to craft one of these omnidirectional connectors, and they're pretty cheap. They just required some basic stuff that we already had from the mod, and then also these logic directors. Now these required some of these crystallized chorus chunks. To get these, you had to do some squeezing of the popped chorus fruit, and to get the chorus fruit, I went ahead and used some of our ender predictions with an apple to create the chorus fruit. All we had to do was place it down here, connected to our cables somehow, and I just took the portable interface here, the terminal, and shift right clicked onto it, and it's as simple as that. Now we have access to our entire storage. Until we do fully move over to AE2, that'll just make our lives a whole lot easier. And the last thing I did between episodes was I set up two of these phytogenic insulators. These are machines from Thermal that basically just let us grow whatever plants we want automatically. So they're pretty cheap. They just require some lumium and some basic stuff that we have, like some tin. So what I have set up here is just one doing spruce and one doing dark oak. Now I do have some augments in here. I have these sped up quite a bit, but then also I have this cyclical processing upgrade. And what this is doing is just giving us a nice passive supply of logs that we can use for crafting later down the road. But before we dive right into AE2, I want to do one more thing very quickly, and it has to do with our resource production setup over behind me. There's an add-on mod for the Create mod called the Create Ender Transmission mod. What this basically does is it adds a bunch of wireless functionality to the Create mod. For example, this energy transmitter lets us send rotational units wirelessly, which is very interesting. We can make use of some of the stress units that we're creating over at the steam boiler back at our workshop and send them wirelessly over to our resource production to speed them up. All we have to do is craft up two of these energy transmitters and we should be good to go. So I have all the resources in my inventory that we should need. Let's turn the entire workshop back on again. And there we go. That should be the Create Energy Transmitter. Now we actually need two of these because we need one to be able to send and one to receive. So let's go ahead and make one more up really quick. So I want to make sure that this is always going to be getting stress units sent over, regardless of whether the workshop in here is turned on or off. So the way we're going to accomplish that is by coming back here, and I have set up another rotation speed controller off of a different shaft line, so it's not related to the main clutch here at all. And then we're going to go ahead and put one of these transmitters down just like so. So the way we can actually set this up is by right-clicking on the energy transmitter. We can set it to a network. So let's just say to the one network. So now anything else on the one network should be sharing the stress units from the entire system. So we're not going to actually need to use any of these rotational stress units anymore. So what we can basically go ahead and do now is place the energy transmitter facing up, and then we can add the cogwheel. And look at how much faster this is running now. These are using much more in the way of stress units now, but we do have plenty, I believe, of stress units to support the whole system. We're still only using 23% of our total stress capacity, even by adding in this extra setup here. So we have plenty of create power to send around. So if we ever wanted to send more power, we could use the exact same setup here and send it somewhere else in the base. So to get ourselves started into AE2, we're going to first need to get a couple of inscribers. The inscribers are what we're going to use to create all the different circuits in the mod, and we make those circuits by using all of the different presses that we've gotten here. You can make these presses in the smithing table by using a piece of paper and then a different type of resource. For example, the silicone press requires a piece of silicon, the calculation press requires a Certus quartz crystal, etc., etc. So once we have all four of these presses, we're basically ready to go. Now there is something called the Advanced Inscriber, which is from an add-on mod called AE2 Things. Now this one is going to be much more convenient for us to use in the long term, and the Advanced Inscriber isn't actually too expensive. It just requires one normal inscriber and two engineering processors. I think we're going to want to upgrade to these as soon as we can. Let's go ahead and make a couple of these inscribers. We can make 4 to start, which is going to be good. That should be more than sufficient for what we're going to need at first. We'll place one down right here just for now. And what we're going to want to do is start off by getting some silicone, which for some reason I don't actually have any silicone, so I'm gonna have to grab some Certus quartz and smelt this down. We can smelt a little bit of this down over here by just smelting up the Certus, and that'll hopefully convert right into silicone. So we have to give this a little bit of power here to make this work, and I believe we can go ahead and just place the silicone press in and then also one piece of silicon. And that crafts our first printed silicone. We can also then grab our engineering press out of here and put one diamond in to do the exact same thing, but it'll give us a printed engineering circuit. So with these two circuits here, we put one of these in each slot here with one piece of redstone, and this will create a finished processor. The engineering processor, nice. We do have to get, it looks like, some charged Certus for this quest reward, or we might have to grab a charger really quick just to do that. Will this charge up? There we go. And that is a piece of charged Certus quartz. Nice. And that's going to be a quest reward done. And then we also have our Fluix crystal already done as well. We want to get into AE2, so let's go ahead and grab some of these Fluix ME glass cables, and that should hopefully be enough to get ourselves into that quest line. Some quartz fiber, a couple pieces of Fluix, and here are our first glass cables. Now, I'm not sure if there's a separate quest line for AE2, so to get ourselves fully into the AE2 quest line, we might actually have to start by crafting a controller, which requires 4 skystone blocks, 4 Fluix crystal, and an engineering processor, which we already have. We're going to need a few more of these at some point, but it looks like we do have everything we need to craft our first controller. So it doesn't look like there's a further quest line for AE2. After this, we're kind of on our own, which is totally fine. So let's go ahead and make 2 more of those engineering processors really quick, because I do want to see what the advanced inscriber lets us do. The thing you'll notice about the normal inscriber is that when you have one of these presses in here like this, and then you put a stack of items in, it'll only take one item at a time. So we have a couple of inscribers here. Can we go ahead and make an advanced inscriber? We can make a couple of hoppers, and we can craft an advanced inscriber. So let's replace this one with the advanced inscriber and see how different it is. But as you can see, we can put a whole stack of items in here and just let it go. It also accepts more upgrades than the normal inscribers do, so it's going to be really nice for when we want to speed this whole thing up. And one thing to keep in mind is the temporal pouch doesn't actually increase the speed of the inscribers. I didn't actually know that. So let's go ahead and make these engineering processors and upgrade all of our inscribers to the advanced inscribers. And finally, there we go. So we have now 4 advanced inscribers total. We're probably going to want some inscribers dedicated to doing only one type of material. So for example, we're probably going to want to put the silicone press into one and have this one only ever making silicone. That way it eliminates some of the complexity of trying to remove the presses out of here. So if we want to do that for all 4 of these different resources, that's going to be 4 total. And then we're going to probably need a couple more to do all the processors as well. You can probably get away with doing less inscribers for an automated setup. In my mind, this will just take away some of the complexity of having to automate all of them separately, and it'll make it a much smoother process in the future. So now that we have a couple more of these, we can actually go ahead and place in the logic one here and get some gold started in this inscriber. And over here, we can actually get the calculation press in and get some Certus quartz. So now we should be making all 3 of the different types of circuits. Of course, we do also want to make the silicone one as well. So let's go ahead and just bring up a little bit of cable, and we'll put the 4th one up here, which will be dedicated to silicone. And here is our final inscriber that we're going to need for the setup. So this is awesome. Let's go ahead and just take everything out of here for now, because I want to rework how this is all laid out. So I actually want to use a modular router to send power to all these, because the modular routers are just amazing for sending power. I use them all the time now. I just want to grab one of these camo upgrades, because we can disguise the modular router as a different block now. Let's put it right here, actually. Modular router right there. Let's go ahead and camouflage it as this cyan terracotta. And now we can barely even tell it's there. So how I'm going to set this up is I want 2 rows of these, 4 here and then 4 right here. The top 2 are actually going to be doing only silicone. So the silicone press is going to have to be made again. There we go. So let's give this some energy upgrades and some speed upgrades. And then we also have to give this a little bit of power. So let's go ahead and come underneath, give it a point. And now we want to go and select all of these inscribers and basically add them to our modular router, and they should all be getting power. So all of our presses here, the logic press, the engineering press, and then the calculation press, are all going to go down here on the left. All of these ones here, or these 3 right here, are going to be designated just for creating the full processors. The ME controller is essentially the heart of your Applied Energistics system. If we hold W to ponder, it'll basically give you a really great explanation of to how the controller actually works. As you can see here, the controller can be a multi-block and it has to fit within a 7x7x7. Now you can't have it in certain configurations, but you can do really cool stuff like this. This is a 3x3x3. The one that I'm actually looking to do is going to be a 5x5x5. Now, am I going to make full use of a 5x5x5 ME controller? Absolutely not. That is way overkill for what I'm going to be using in this pack, absolutely. But I'm mainly just doing it for the aesthetic because I think they look really, really cool. So because I want to do a relatively large controller multi-block, I'm going to need quite a few of these ME controllers. I believe the total number I need is like 44. I have all the materials here that I need except for all the processors. So once we have about 44 of these engineering processors, we can go ahead and make all the controllers that we're going to want. And there we go. We have 44 ME controllers exactly, which I think might be enough, but we'll have to go and double check. Where I want this to be is right here on this 5x5 on the upper floor. They should start to automatically kind of connect like they do in the middle here. We're not going to fill the middle in though, just do the outer frame. Are we going to have enough? Let's see. It looks like it just was correct. Awesome. Okay, so that is going to be our finished ME controller. Now this does require some power. So to give the controller some power, let's just go ahead and put a point on here for now. And this should all light up. There we go. Wow, this is a little hard in the eyes potentially, but this is going to look really cool, especially at night. I'm actually really excited to see how this whole thing looks at night. And as you can see, we can right click on the ME controller. Currently it's draining 132 AE per tick, but again, we have nothing else connected so far, just the controllers. So this is where things are going to start getting pretty fun in AE2, and also potentially a little bit complicated if you haven't played with the mod before. Now, I am relatively new to AE2, so I might not do a very good job explaining at times. So if I'm doing anything that's a little bit confusing or I don't explain something perfectly, I highly recommend going and checking out the wiki and all the different videos on AE2. That being said, I will do my best to explain everything I'm doing to a point that I think is understandable. You can also feel free to join my Discord and ask a question just in there, and I'll be sure to get back to you if I have the answer for you. So one of the main ways that AE2 differs from refined storage is the cabling. The cables in Applied Energistics have what is called a channel, whereas refined storage, there are no channels. A cable is a cable, and any refined storage object that's touching another one will be acting as a cable as well. But in AE2, there are cables that have channels. In the simplest of terms, a channel basically specifies how many machines you can hook up to that one cable. Now, by default, these Fluix ME glass cables are kind of like the basic cable for the mod, and these carry 8 channels each. All the covered cable is just a retextured normal cable, but there are also these cables called smart cables. So for example, if we take one of our normal covered cables and add a piece of glowstone and redstone to it, let's go ahead and see if we can do that really quick. That'll give us a Fluix ME smart cable. Now, how the smart cable is different from the normal cable is the smart cable will actually show us how many channels are on this one cable that are available. So for example, if we go ahead and place it down against the controller, we can now see that there are 0 of 8 channels that have been taken up on this cable. So we can now hook up effectively 8 more machines to this one cable. The normal cables offer the exact same amount of channels as the smart cable does here. You just can't see how many are available on this one cable. So the smart cables just keep us a little bit better organized and managing our channels a little more effectively. Now there are also these cables called the dense cables. Similarly to the covered cables, there are the normal covered dense cables and also the normal dense smart cables. If each of these smart cables gives us 8 channels each, then it would logically make sense that the dense smart cable would give us 32 channels, 8 times 4. And that's exactly what you get. We can see that we have 32 channels online. Each of these faces can basically offer us 32 channels. And so if you add up all the different faces here, that is so many machines that I am never going to be worried about running out of channels. So we're going to want to make a bunch of cable. So to make a bunch of cable, we're going to need a bunch of this quartz fiber, because then we're going to need to make a ton of the Fluix cable, just like this. Making stacks and stacks of this stuff is not a problem, because we are definitely going to use it. Now, one thing to note about the dense cables is if they are a different color cable, then they actually won't connect to each other. Let's go for the black cables, sure. So if we attach all of these to the controller directly, we can see that these have 32 channels, and we can see how these connect to each other when they are the same type of cable. However, if we go ahead and put down the white cable beside, you can see that they don't actually connect at all, which is going to be really nice in the future because that way we're not overlapping channels and we can keep all of our channels separately on all the different colors. This way we can kind of organize what things are connected to what based on what color they are on. Now I want to run these cables all the way to the basement where our inscribers are as well, because we want to bring out some cabling over there. Not all of these are going to go down there though. So let's go ahead and just run these down. What I can do is just bring these down here, and then I'm going to probably run them along the back wall, just like this. So now we have 3 lines of cables running from upstairs down here. And underground in the basement here, we can see that we have very easy access to this middle white cable. So I think what I'm actually going to do with this then is bring down the dense cable. Running the channels around with some of the normal smart cable is just a little bit cheaper than running the dense cable super far. So it's actually a good idea to use your dense cable to bring your channels down to a certain point, and then use your normal smart cables to then connect in your machines. So we'll end up hooking in those machines in a little bit, but right now we have to do a little bit more work upstairs. So in the plan for this episode, the thing I had on the last part of the episode was going to be to make the controller and the basic auto-crafting setup. And a basic auto-crafting setup is going to be huge going forward. Now, AE2's auto-crafting is very different from how Refined Storage handles auto-crafting. It's quite a bit more complicated, but at the same time, it's also very, very rewarding because it can be very powerful. Autocrafting takes place in the form of these molecular assemblers. Think of a molecular assembler as like a fancy crafting table. It can provide and produce a 3x3 crafting recipe of whatever it's told to make. The way that it knows what it needs to craft is by using the pattern providers, which is where we're going to place all of our auto-crafting patterns into. The pattern provider can basically input and export items from the system. So the pattern provider is actually a very powerful block because it can provide essentially an importer and exporter all in one. So to craft these up, the molecular assembler is quite easy. It just requires some of this quartz glass, which is very easy. We have tons of Certus and glass, so we can actually go ahead and make a bunch of stacks of this stuff. And it also requires these formation and annihilation cores, which require a logic processor, a fluix dust, and a Certus quartz crystal. There we go. Let's make a few of those formation cores, maybe like 16. And then we'll also probably want to make 16 of the annihilation cores. They just require a normal piece of quartz instead of a Certus quartz. So now let's go ahead and craft up a molecular assembler. We're also going to want one pattern provider just to start out, because I want to demonstrate how this works before we start scaling this up. So we need to hook this into our controller, so I want to set it up maybe over here somewhere. Let's go ahead and just plop this down right here, and the molecular assembler can go right here. Yeah, that should be okay there. So now we can see this is online. We have one channel being used, and that is because the pattern provider is now online, and the molecular assembler is now online. Now, there is only one channel being used, even though there are 2 machines, because the molecular assemblers actually don't take any channels up, just the pattern providers that are used to craft in them. We have a pattern provider which has space for all these patterns. And it looks like we have, 9 patterns total that can be placed into this one provider. However, we can actually scale this up a little bit right now. And I want to do that by making one more of each of these. And the way we're actually going to lay this out is by doing kind of a crisscross pattern like this. Because the pattern provider is kind of connected via the assembler, it actually sees that there is another pattern provider over here, even though it's not directly hooked into the cable, and it's now online. The reason I had this set up like this is because now what we can do is effectively make use of both of these molecular assemblers for any of these patterns. So say we had a pattern for crafting sticks, and then we had a pattern for crafting planks from logs. If we only had one molecular assembler, we would have to wait for the one craft to be done before it could start the next one. But because there are 2 molecular assemblers attached to this provider, it can actually make use of both of these assemblers at the same time. That's why Applied Energistics auto-crafting setup, in my mind, is very, very strong, because you can do a lot of these very complex crafts very quickly because you can do all this stuff simultaneously. But let's go ahead and try this out. Let's just actually get going and see if we can make something happen. I want to craft a ME crafting terminal, which is effectively going to be the way we're going to craft all of our items going forward. And as you can see, we have a crafting terminal here. We can go ahead and right click it, and obviously we have nothing in our system yet. We have nothing hooked up over there, and we have no digital drives or anything, so there is nothing to be seen here as of now. We're also going to want to get a pattern encoding terminal, which will be very important going forward, which we'll put down aside here just like so. And finally, there is the pattern access terminal. The pattern access terminal will actually let us see all of our pattern providers on our network. So we can actually manage all of our auto crafting recipes and where they're located, all from this one panel. And we can obviously get a wireless version of the crafting grid so we can do this crafting from wherever we are on the island. Now, auto crafting doesn't just have to be done in the molecular assemblers. We can also go ahead and craft a bunch of items using the inscribers, for example. Let's get a couple more of these pattern providers, and we can put them all on the back of our inscribers. Now, these interfaces are very smart, so what we can actually go ahead and do is grab our cable, come up here and hook them into the top, and that should make it so all 4 of these are online. Same on this side, we can go ahead and connect these 4 in, and now all of these are online as well. So our inscribers should be able to be seen on our network. We come upstairs to our pattern access terminal. We can see that we have 8 advanced inscribers online ready to have patterns put in here. And we can also see we have 2 molecular assemblers upstairs that we have access to as well. Now, to make patterns, we actually have to go ahead and make a couple to begin with, and they just take a couple of basic resources. We want to just get some Certus crystal like this out, and that makes 2 patterns. And what we want to do with the patterns is go into the encoding terminal and put them in this slot right here. Now we can start making patterns for all sorts of recipes. And there are 4 different types of recipes we can encode. There are the normal 3x3 crafting patterns. There are some processing patterns, so the inscribers downstairs will be the processing patterns. We can do smithing table patterns and also stone cutting patterns, which is very interesting. These 2 we probably won't use too much, but these top 2 are going to be what we use the most. So some of the most important auto crafts that we can have at the beginning of the game here are probably going to be recipes that we're going to use a lot. So for example, being able to auto craft more patterns is going to be important. So let's go ahead and do that. We are going to have to teach it how to make a quartz glass as well. We want to make sure that our substitutions are disabled so it only ever uses the normal glass. We also want to be able to auto craft our Fluix cables. So what we can go ahead and do is come down to our molecular assemblers and start putting some of these patterns in. There we go. So we have all of these patterns put into our molecular assemblers. So if we come upstairs now, we can go ahead and see that our patterns are in fact in here ready to go. But we're going to actually want way more pattern providers and assemblers than this. So what I'm actually wanting to do is probably crafting up a good number more of those. Let's just do 8 for now. Oh, we have 9. Okay, that's fine. And then we can go ahead and make some more molecular assemblers too. Now what we're going to want to do is basically place them the exact same layout here, but just flipped. So we're going to want the pattern providers on top of the molecular assemblers. So we can go ahead and put these 2 up here just like so, and then put the 2 assemblers. And then we can stack them all the way up, just doing the exact same pattern over and over again, all the way till we get to about here, and then we could probably add even one more layer if we want to, but that should be fine. Now, as you can see, there are 8 channels being used here, but some of these ones at the top here are actually missing channels. And the reason for that is 1 point of attachment, like on the pattern provider, can only register up to 8 channels total by being connected to 1 block. If we go ahead and change this so it's connected to 2, we'll see that we now have 10 channels and all of these are online. So we can run all this underneath here and then use some facades at the end to cover it all up. But now this basically allows us to see all these pattern providers, and they should be all available for auto crafting. So we can actually come back into our crafter here and see that we have access to all these assemblers now. What I actually want to do is spread these out vertically, not horizontally, because this will let all these be crafted basically in parallel. So all these can be crafted at the same time, and that'll speed the entire thing up. So in order for the auto crafting to really become useful for us though, we have to have access to our items, because right now we have all these recipes set up, but no way to really craft them because we don't have access to all those items from our other storage. The way that we can actually solve that issue is by using something called the ME storage bus. This acts very similarly to an external storage from Refined Storage. We can basically go ahead and put this onto the drawer controller over there. Now, all of the items that are in the netherite barrels over there are going to want to be moved over as well, but we're going to want to move them into disks. Applied Energistics actually has a couple options in terms of digital storage. So for example, we have to use the ME drive to basically put disks into, which is fine. But once we get into the actual disks themselves, we have some options. A single cell of items can hold up to 63 different types of items, and it uses bytes to determine how many of those items can be stored. So for example, a 256,000 item storage cell can only support 63 unique items, adding up to a total of 256,000 items. It gets a little more complicated than that. You can actually get a little more out of your item storage cells if you properly manage them by what goes into which cell. And you can actually partition these storage cells similarly to how you would a normal hard drive to only accept certain items. So you can actually format all your cells to be very efficient. Frankly, I don't really know if I want to do that right now in this series. I'm a little lazy, so I'm thinking about a different option. In this pack, there's also a second option, which is called the disk drive. Now this effectively acts just like the disk drives do from refined storage. This one will hold 64,000 items regardless of what type they are. And what I'm going to want to be using our disks for is not going to be the bulk items, just the items that we have, you know, a couple stacks of, but we're going to have a lot of different types of items. Not because these are better by any means, just based on what we're going to be using them for. I think this is going to be a little more practical. Over here, I have this dugout, and the storage bus is going to be on the storage controller, just on the side of it like this. This is going to be the highest priority out of everything. So let's go ahead and put this to like a, I don't know, let's just do a 20 priority for now. That should be fine. In this case, it'll be the first to go into the drawers and the last to come out, which is exactly how we want it. And then we're going to run just our normal smart cable up and connect it in like this. I know you might be thinking that it's probably going to be better to run the dense cable all the way over here in case we want to branch out to other parts of the island. I have a different plan for that, probably in a future episode. And I think right now we're just going to go ahead and use the normal smart cables because they are cheaper to run in long distances. So what we're going to go ahead and do is take this personal shrinking device I've made, and I have it set to shrink down to 0.2 of our normal size, so I can shift and right click, and now we are tiny. And now I can go and just dig a nice hole here and dig straight along here. Let's go ahead and grab the dense cable out and run this down. And now that we have this broken off here, let's go ahead and grab our normal cables, and we're going to run this all the way over to the storage drawers. It's actually a good time to explain how the facades work in Applied Energistics. What you have to do is craft one of these cable anchors. So let's go ahead and get some of these quartz knives. Looks like we can use any ingot to craft the anchors. So let's just go ahead and see what ingots we have most of. Looks like iron is our highest one right now. So let's go ahead and get that. And we'll want to make a few stacks of these for sure. Now to make a facade, you just take the anchors and put them in this pattern like this. And then take whatever block you want to add the facade for. So for example, I want spruce planks. So now we can go ahead and make a bunch of spruce facades. Now we can just go ahead and right click them on just like so. And there we go. We have done a little bit of facade work along the sides here. It kind of has a bit of a cable run look. So we know that there's a cable there, but it does kind of hide it a little bit nicer. And I think that looks pretty good. And now if we come take a look at our crafting terminal, we should see all the items in our drawers. Yes, we do. Perfect. I'm going to put the storage for the disks, the drive slots, 3 on each side. And I think these should have enough channels here. As you can see, just hooking in the one drive here, also hooked in these two as well. We have one that's missing a channel. Then let's go ahead and run this a little differently. Let's run the cable up here, other smart cables off to the side. Okay, so we should have 3 on each of these sides now, which is 6 channels total. We can very simply just add some of these anchors in here, just like this. And now what we can do is place one more cable down here, and then we can add our pattern encoding terminal, our pattern access terminal, and our crafting terminal. And now everything should be online. Let me just double check really quick. Yes, that's everything is online now. Perfect, because we're properly splitting the channels up here, so we're not having any overlap. Let's go ahead and actually cover up this spot. And there we go. The front has been completely facaded. So now what I have to do is start crafting up some of these discs. Now we do have access to, I believe, 256k discs. That's probably going to be our goal to get to this point. And we're just going to need a bunch of storage components here. So we're going to have to go down the list and see what we need. Quick math, that it's 81. So we're going to need 81 of the 1Ks to get to a 256k. We should be able to fully automate the inscriber production of all of our raw resources for these components, because we can make the logic processors very easily, and the other stuff we have already in bulk. So if we come to our pattern encoding terminal, we want to go ahead and teach it how to make a logic processor that needs to send a printed silicone 1 redstone dust, and a printed logic circuit to make a logic processor. Likewise, we also have to teach it how to make a printed silicone by telling it that 1 silicone equals 1 printed silicone. We actually don't want to include the press in the recipe because we already have it put in the machine, so we can go ahead and just remove it and make a custom recipe like that. And then finally, we want to go ahead and get the printed logic circuit. So very similarly, we want to take out the press and just say 1 gold ingot equals 1 printed logic circuit. Let's go ahead and put the silicone into this one right here. We can actually put 1 more into the other one to help speed up the production. We're going to put it inside of the other inscriber as well in the back here. And this here is our logic press. So we want to go ahead and say, here is our printed logic circuit. Finally, we want to then teach it how to make the logic processor by putting this one here on the back. I also want to go ahead and make the other presses as well, because we're going to want to make these at some point, obviously. So let's go ahead and get all these made up right away. Let's go ahead and see if we can auto-craft one of these storage components, our 64K and our 256K. So can we craft a 256K storage component? We can. We have everything available for the crafting. Now, here's one thing that I actually forgot about. It says here that no crafting CPUs are available. That's because Applied Energistics makes it a little more complicated than refined storage, in that we have to create computers essentially to allow the auto crafting to happen. And the way that we add storage to a computing system is by adding some of these crafting storages. The crafting storage is essentially what allows us to do the complex crafts. So for example, if we go Applied Energistics and say storage, for now, I'm going to go ahead and just make one of these 64Ks. To speed this process up a little bit, we can go ahead and craft the acceleration cards very easily. Now we can go ahead and put in a few of these acceleration cards and look how much faster that runs now. All right, so to make the computer here, we need to make, first of all, we have to make a couple of these co-processing units. What the co-processing units basically allow you to do is to make use of more than one molecular assembler at a time. How we have this set up, one of these interfaces can basically access 4 molecular assemblers at a time, except for the very top ones can only access 3, but most of them in the middle can access 4. But if you have a crafting CPU with none of these co-processing units, it actually won't allow you to use more than just one. So if you want your system to be able to make use of multiple molecular assemblers, you have to make sure you have a couple of co-processing units. Every additional co-processing unit you add, it allows 1 extra assembler to be used. So for example, to fully maximize this, I would need to have an extra 3 co-processing units. Let's set the computer up right over here, and we can go ahead and place it down just like so. So that is our crafting storage. And it has this really cool multi-block look once you have it connected. It does have to be in a rectangular format. So if I come up here to our crafting terminal here and say, I want to make a 256K storage component, we should have all the resources that we need. We can go ahead and say the computer we want is the crafting CPU 1, or we can go ahead and just say use automatic, and that should be totally fine. And we can go ahead and start. Now, if we come upstairs here, we should be able to see that there is some crafting happening, which there is. And if we come back downstairs, there should be some stuff happening in these inscribers, and it looks like it's done. So do we have a 256K unit somewhere? Oh, there we go. It's in one of the pattern providers because there was no inventory for it to come back to, which we can then go ahead and turn into the disk drive here. By making use of our other storage system, we now have a 256 ME disk drive. So now we have some storage for our setup here. So now I get the fun job of moving all of our items over from our barrels into our new disk. And the way I'm going to do that is by using an import bus here and also some acceleration cards, because it's going to take forever if we don't do that. And all we should have to do now is hook up the cable, and this should start draining all of our items once this becomes online. Yeah, so it is very, very slowly draining. Oh yeah, that's way faster. And there we go, we have all of our storage moved over, so we are fully on AE2. We have everything hooked up back here. I even added one more crafting terminal at our old storage location here, just so that we can have somewhere to come and access if we want to. But the one thing that I do want to craft up before the end of the episode now is the wireless crafting terminal. But what I was looking at was also there is this wireless universal terminal that also allows us to have the pattern encoding terminal all in one, which would be really cool. What we can go ahead and do now is basically just combine these like this, and that should create the wireless universal terminal. And there we go. That should be all good to go. Device is not linked. Okay, so we have to take this device out. I think we have to right click it onto the controller upstairs here. Oh, I think I remember you have to make like the, is it the security terminal? I think this sounds familiar. I think we have to make the ME security terminal. Is that online? Okay, so can I now link this in here? There we go. So that is now linked. ME wireless access point. Is that what I'm thinking? I think this is what we need. Let's go ahead and try and make this. Okay, so that's online now. It has a 16-meter range by default, but that's not going to be good enough for what we want. The wireless booster. We can do a ender pearl in an inscriber. Okay, let's go ahead and do that really quick. That should be exporting into our system right now, which it is. Let's go ahead and make as many as we can. I don't know how many we can add. There is also the infinity range booster, which I think we can actually go ahead and make. Yeah, we can make the infinity range booster. Actually, we can go ahead and make some more of these. We need to make 4 of them total, because then we can go ahead and turn them into the dimension card. This should give us unlimited access to our entire system anywhere in the world in any dimension. And how much power is this going to cost? Only 9. That's so cheap. That's like nothing. That's really awesome. It's like a creative wireless booster pretty much then. So we can go anywhere now in the world. We can hit tab, and we are basically accessing our storage at any point. And we can also come in here, open the next terminal, and encode patterns right in here. And now that we have all the autocrafting and stuff set up, this is where everything starts to become way faster. We start to get things automated, things being kept in stock, all sorts of really cool things we can now do. And I can't wait to make use of our new AE system across the entirety of this island that we're going to be building. But anyways, everyone, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you haven't joined the Discord already, be sure to do that. The link is in the description down below. But that's it for me, everybody. I hope you all have a good one, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye!